Good morning. Great to see you all today. My name is Emily Tanis-Likkel. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the pastor here at Alki UCC. Let us breathe in the peace of God, the light of love. We give thanks for all who gather here, including the Jewish congregation of Kol HaNeshama. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish and Suquamish people past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and these tribes. Today is the fourth Sunday of the season of Lent. Lent is the time we set apart in the church to help us get ready to come close to the mystery of Easter. It's time to reflect, time to wonder, time to listen. The fourth Sunday marks the halfway point, and so we find ourselves here in the mysterious middle of the season. Healing happens in the middle. Jesus walked along the road with his disciples, and right here and now with you and me, healing happens. So wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you have a place here at Alki United Church of Christ.
Good morning. I invite you to stand if comfortable and join with me in the responsive call to worship. Scripture is full of questions. Where are you? Am I my brother's keeper? Whom shall I send? Who do you say that I am? Who sinned? How many times shall I forgive? If God is for us, who can be against us? Scripture is full of questions. So just like those in our scripture, may we bring our full curiosity and wonder into this space. Let us ask and seek after our merciful God. Scripture reading this morning is from John 9, verses 1 through 41 in the Message. Walking down the street, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind?"
Jesus said, "You're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause and effect here. Look instead for what God can do. We need to be energetically at work for the one who sent me here, working while the sun shines. When night falls, the workday is over. For as long as I am in the world, there is plenty of light. I am the world's light."
He said this, and then spit in the dust, made a clay paste with the saliva, rubbed the paste on the blind man's eyes, and said, "Go wash at the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. The man went and washed and saw. Soon the town was buzzing. His relatives and all those who year after year had seen him as a blind man begging were saying, "Why, isn't this the man we knew who sat here and begged?"
Others said, "It's him, all right."
But others objected. "It's not the same man at all. It just looks like him."
He said, "It's me, the very one."
They said, "How did your eyes get open?"
A man named Jesus made a paste and rubbed it on my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' I did what he said. When I washed, I saw."
So where is he?
"I don't know."
They marched the man to the Pharisees. This day, when Jesus made the paste and healed his blindness, was the Sabbath. The Pharisees grilled him again on how he had come to see. He said, "He put a clay paste on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see."
Some of the Pharisees said, "Well, obviously this man can't be from God. He doesn't keep the Sabbath."
Others countered, "How can a bad man do malicious, God revealing things like this?" There was a split in their ranks.
They came back to the blind man. "Well, you're the expert. He opened your eyes. What do you say about him?"
He said, "He is a prophet."
The Jews didn't believe it, didn't believe the man was blind to begin with. So they called the parents of the man, now bright-eyed with sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, the one you say was born blind? So how is it that he now sees?"
His parents said, "We know he is our son, and we know he was born blind, but we don't know how he came to see. Haven't a clue about who opened his eyes. Why don't you ask him? He's a grown man and can speak for himself." His parents were talking like this because they were intimidated by the Jewish leaders, who had already decided that anyone who took a stand that this was the Messiah would be kicked out of the meeting place. That's why his parents said, "Ask him. He's a grown man."
They called the man back a second time, the man who had been blind, and told him, "Give credit to God. We know this man is an impostor."
He replied, "I know nothing about that one way or the other, but I know one thing for sure. I was blind. I now see."
They said, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?"
"I've told you over and over, and you haven't listened. Why do you want to hear it again? Are you so eager to become his disciples?"
With that, they jumped all over him. "You might be a disciple of that man, but we're disciples of Moses. We know for sure that God spoke to Moses, but we have no idea where this man even comes from."
The man replied, "This is amazing. You claim to know nothing about him, but the fact is, he opened my eyes. It's well known that God isn't at the beck and call of sinners, but listens carefully to anyone who lives in reverence and does his will. That someone opened the eyes of a man born blind has never been heard of, ever. If this man didn't come from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything."
They said, "You're nothing but dirt. How dare you take that tone with us?" Then they threw him out on the street.
Jesus heard what they had done to him and went and found him. Jesus asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?"
The man said, "Point him out to me, sir, so that I can believe in him."
And Jesus said, "You're looking right at him. Don't you recognize my voice?"
"Teacher, I believe," the man said, and worshiped him.
Jesus then said, "I came into the world to bring everything into the clear light of day, making all the distinctions clear, so that those who have never seen will see, and those who have made a great pretense of seeing will be exposed as blind."
But some of the Pharisees overheard him and said, "Does that mean you're calling us blind?"
And Jesus replied, "If you were really blind, you would be blameless. But since you claim to see everything so well, you're accountable for every fault and failure."
And so ends the reading.
Our theme for this season of Lent is seeking honest questions for a deeper faith. Questions can help us understand another person. Questions can help us get to the heart of faith. Questions can be a catalyst for transformation. And Sometimes questions can wound. Sometimes questions can reveal our judgment, our assumptions, our biases. Sometimes our questions do not come from a place of love. They diminish the other instead of seeing them as a child of God. The freedom God gives us to seek, it comes with boundaries. Some questioning of others is hurtful. Jesus' disciples asked him about a man they had passed while they were walking along. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Asking this question, who sinned? It's a hurtful question. It's based on judgment. And Jesus was quick to correct his disciples. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. Not only is no one to blame for this man's disability, but more importantly, he reflects the wholeness and beauty of God. He is an expression of God's love when he was blind and when he was given sight. As Jesus said, God's works were revealed in him. Jesus spat on the ground and made mud and spread it on the man's eyes. He told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. He went and washed and came back able to see. And when he returned, Jesus was gone, and the questions began. Is this not the man who used to sit and beg? How were your eyes opened? Where's the man who did this? Then they brought the man to the teachers of the law and asked more questions, more assumptions, more biases, more not seeing. He said, it's pretty simple. He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see. Some of those law interpreters said, well, in that case, that man broke the Sabbath by doing that action on a holy day. Others disagreed. How can a sinner perform such signs? And they were divided. So they called in the parents. The parents refused to play, fearing that they would be cast out of the synagogue. The man was called back to the teachers of the law once again. More questions. This time he's exasperated. I do not know whether or not this Jesus is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. More questions. I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? In this great line of sarcasm. Do you also want to become his disciples? The man who was born blind could finally see. What freedom he must have felt, but only for a moment, because he was rejected and was treated as dust. And in that cast out place, Jesus found him. Jesus offered healing again, offered him hope, offered him wholeness, offered him shalom. So what do we think of this story? Would people really have withheld celebrating someone receiving sight? Would they really completely diminish such an obvious healing? How could they? How could that be? It's happening right now, my friends, in over 300 legislative bills. Misinformed people say, who sinned? They ask questions that reveal judgment, assumptions, and biases about the precious lives of those who are transgender. And they are being treated as dust. as not worthy of receiving gender-affirming care, disrespected. Our youth are dying by suicide at alarming rates, and the lives of transgender youth hang in the balance as the social stigma they endure render them most susceptible to depression, anxiety, and suicide. We must honor the wholeness that people seek. When someone reveals something to you about themselves, hold with care what they share. You might have questions that bubble to the surface that are along the lines of, how can this be? Set those questions aside. What that other person likely needs in that moment is not to hear your questions of how or why. They need your support. They need your unconditional love. Because people blame themselves. They feel like they're not enough. And when parents of transgender kids are not supported, when they are questioned and judged, this is amplified because not only are they tending to their kids who are going through so much, they're fighting for their kids' right to exist. There's this painful part in today's narrative where the neighbors ask of the man who had been born blind, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" And some were saying, "It is he." And others were saying, "No, it just looks like him." And he kept saying, the text says, "I am the man." He kept saying, "This is me." We shouldn't have to defend our identity, and so many do. They come to their own defense. "This is who I am. All I'm asking for is you to accept me as I am, to see me." And when they aren't seen, when they are cast out, whether it's being bullied on Twitter or disowned by family or laughed at by so-called friends or pestered with bigoted questions or legislation from our lawmakers, that being cast out, it's painful. That's the stuff of depression and suicide. And many of our Christian siblings are the ones perpetrating transphobia, prejudice against people who are transgender. Wherever a person is on their journey, it is such an honor to hold space for them, to support, to refrain from unhelpful questioning, to say, "I'm here for you." We are not all so different as we think. Our humanity binds us together. The man who had been born blind had a lot to teach those witnesses. They just didn't open their eyes to see it. We all have something to learn from each other. And when those law teachers and interpreters were trying to figure out what happened and how, the text tells us they were divided. Isn't that what happens? When we don't see each other, when we don't respect each other, when we don't honor each other, we become divided. And our country is divided. But Jesus does not allow for us to say, "I'm glad I'm not like the Pharisees." So we must not point our finger at those with whom we disagree and be satisfied. We can advocate all we want, and we should, but that is not the whole story. No, we must with humility ask ourselves, who am I not seeing? How am I not honoring? What questions must I refrain from asking? How am I assuming? How am I judging? Jesus pointed out, you shouldn't be asking who sinned. You should be saying, look what God can do. Oh, and the beauty of what God can do, reflected in the trans body, reflected in your body, made in God's image in stunning diversity. And if we're having some trouble seeing people the way God sees them, well, that's something we can pray for. That God would give us the eyes to see. To imagine people we disagree with in our mind's eye, imagining the light and love of God shining on them. The story reminds us that the gospel always comes back to love. Relationships and wholeness are always more important than following rules. A healing conversation can cause fear to fall away. Jesus sought out the man he had healed and found him in that cast-out place. We can be Jesus to one another by being that trusted listener, that truth teller that reminds the other you are enough. Our foundation is built on Christ and anchored by that love, we can seek to truly honor others. Sometimes we find the one who has been cast out, and sometimes that is us. And when you have been in that place of loneliness, of being misunderstood, feeling not seen, Jesus always finds you. Jesus sees you even when no one else does. Who sinned? How many times we ask versions of this question? Blaming people? Blaming ourselves? It casts us out. It separates us from others and from ourselves. And if you find yourself in that cast out place right now, take heart. Jesus hangs out at the margins and in the dust with all those who are worn out by other people's questions, tired of blame. He won't ask you anything unhelpful. He may not say anything at all. But he'll look on you with those kind eyes, with eternal love and peace.